Last year we had a problem with our engine, which was something called injector blow-by. If you don't know what injector blow-by is, it's this. What is injector blow-by and how does it occur? If we look at this diagram on the Volvo Penta 2002, which we've got, it's the same on other Penta engines. 2003 is the 3-cylinder version, but they're all the same. Basically you have the cylinder head, and then within that you've got the injector sleeve, which is put into position and then is expanded by the special tool. So this lower section of the injector sleeve, if we show you on this diagram, once this is put into position, there's a special tool which comes down and flares this out, so the combustion gases can't escape past the sleeve and up elsewhere in the engine. What tends to happen is the injector sits in this hole within the sleeve, and sometimes the combustion gases escape past the injector and just start very, very slowly to scour away at the sleeve. So over time, what happened with ours was there was one little point where the combustion gases had dug away a little channel that was going around the side of the injector, and then what happens is on the compression stroke of the piston there's a very high temperature and pressure gas in here, and that just continues to escape up through in the gap between the sleeve and the injector, and then it shoots out of the top of the engine, so you get combustion gases escaping from the engine. As that starts to worsen, it can get so bad that you actually completely lose compression on that cylinder, and the engine, in this case a 2-cylinder engine, would be running on 1 cylinder and you'd get lots of vibration, you wouldn't have much power. Yeah, that's not great. So that's the worst case scenario, and you'll probably pick it up before that because you'll hear a noise. It will start off as a very, very faint tss, 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 and it'll just get gradually worse until in the end it'll be an extremely loud noise that you won't be able to ignore anymore. This is quite a common problem, so it may happen to you one day. If it does, there are a couple of quick fixes that you can try. The first method is the hammer and spanner method. Basically, to do that, you just disconnect the fuel line on top of the injector, then you put something over the threads to protect them. It could be a socket or a short length of copper pipe like that. Then you place that on top of the threads, you get a hammer and you just give it a good few whacks, not too hard, you don't want to be cracking your cylinder head, but just a few taps down on the top of the injector. That might give you enough just to reseat it, and then if you get onto this nut, turn that and just tighten it a little bit more, that might rebed your injector and that might fix the fault straight away. That's the quick fix number one. That didn't work for us last time. It did improve it, but it didn't fully fix it. So I then had to go to a more complicated quick fix, and I'll explain that now. This is the Volvo Penta workshop manual that you can download for free online. So this is the injector sleeve, this is the top of the cylinder, and you would have the piston going up and down. You've got the inlet and exhaust valves, and the piston goes up and down here. So you've got your injector which lives inside this injector sleeve. What we've just done there with the quick fix is we've hammered it down and we've just sealed the gap there between the bottom of the injector and the sleeve, and that might have fixed your problem. In our case that didn't, so what I had to do was I removed the injector. I then made up a special tool which was a rod of copper pipe, and on the end of it I just got a small strip of fine sandpaper and taped it into position. I then put that down into the orifice and used a drill just to rotate it and kind of mill the bottom surface. That did improve it, but it didn't completely fix it. So after that I wanted to fit some copper washers. Unfortunately at the time it was Sunday and I couldn't get any copper washers, so I fabricated some copper washers. I've never had to do that before, but just in case any of you ever need to fabricate a copper washer, this is how you can do that. To fabricate the 2 washers that I made, I used 2 different diameters of copper pipe. you just have to guesstimate the size of washer that you need, and then that determines how much copper pipe and of what diameter that you're going to need to start out with. Here we're going to make a washer with about 4mm of pipe. This is 15mm copper pipe. So just get a pipe cutter, get your 4mm, and then cut a ring shaped piece off your copper pipe. Okay, so we have our small ring of copper pipe, and now copper is different from most metals. Usually with like a steel, if you heat it and then quench it, dip it in water, that heat treats it and hardens it. So like a screwdriver or something, then that's what you do to re-harden that. Copper's the opposite. If you heat it up till it gets to cherry red and then you quench it, that anneals it and makes it a lot softer. So if we were to get a hammer now and try hammering this into a washer shape, it would be a real pain in the neck. In fact, I'll get a hammer and do that just to show you how hard it is now. So this is the untreated copper pipe. So it does start to deform, but you won't get very far with it like that. It's quite hard and it'll take a lot of effort and energy, and you'll probably distort it. So to make this more workable, we're now going to heat it cherry red and quench it. Okay, that's annealed now and it'll be a lot softer to hammer. You actually feel it straight away, it is a lot softer. Okay, that's probably about as far as I'd go with that without re-annealing it. So I'll heat that up again, do the same process, and then we'll come back and hammer it again in a sec. Right, that's probably about the right size to seal an injector. Like I say, last time I used 2 sections of copper pipe and I made another washer that fit on the inside of this one, and then the injector went through the 2 of them. Again, once you've done this, you need to re-anneal these washers before you put them in, and then tighten the injector down on them, and that will make them nice and soft, and it will allow them to deform and fill the irregular shape that you've got underneath your injector, which is causing the problem in the first place. There we are, that's how you make a copper washer. Okay, we've talked about 2 quick fixes there. The hammer and spanner method, which is really quick, and then you can add a copper washer. Hopefully you can go and buy one, but if you're somewhere strange and you can't buy one for whatever reason, you could even make one. Okay, we've seen a couple of quick fixes there for this problem, but the only proper fix is to replace the injector sleeve itself. As I see it, there are 3 different options for doing this. Option number 1, you call a professional. you get a marine diesel specialist down to the boat. They can look into it, they can fix it for you. They're experts, they do this day in day out, so that could give you good peace of mind, but that'll definitely cost you a lot of money. The amount of money that it will cost you could depend on a couple of different things. The way you approach it could make a big difference, in the sense that if you know what the problem is, you've worked out that it's injector blow-by, you've been online, you know how much the parts cost, you know what the procedure is for replacing an injector sleeve, then you can phone the dealer and you can have an informed conversation with them. They understand that you know what you're talking about, and they know that they can't fleece you in any way. And I'm not suggesting that they want to do that. You know, there are lots of honest dealers out there, lots of honest people who do this kind of work, but you have to protect your own interests in situations like this. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is phoning up and saying, hi, I've got a problem with my engine, you can come and fix it. In which case, you know, you're leaving yourself wide open to spending a hell of a lot of money. So that's option one. Then there's option two. If you're more practical, you're someone like me who I've always messed around with cars and stuff. Since the first car that I bought, I've always been there on the driveway underneath it, disconnecting things on the engine, all the rest of it. So I've always got stuck into practical things like this. If you're like that too, then you can actually buy some special tools which will remove the injector sleeve and allow you to insert the new one and then flare it. So there are 3 tools, you can buy them, and then you can do the job yourself potentially without even removing the cylinder head. I've worked out a way that you can do that. So if I had the special tools, that's what I would be doing right now. However, we don't have the special tools and we don't have time to mess around wasting time waiting for them to arrive. So that brings us to option 3, which is the middle way. And basically what you can do is you can get a professional with the correct tools to replace the injector sleeve for you, but you make it a lot cheaper by doing a lot of the work yourself. On this occasion I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be removing the cylinder head, and then we will take that off the boat, wander down to our diesel guy, give it to him, he'll replace the injector sleeve. Actually we're supplying the parts too, we've found the parts online, so the new sleeve, the O-ring and a few new washers. So we're going to give them to the guy, we're just going to pay him for his time, he's going to replace the injector sleeve for us, we'll bring it back to the boat, refit the cylinder head, and then job done. So that's kind of the middle way, and in this way you are doing the rest of the job. So you know your own engine, you get to know how things come apart, and actually I think for a boat owner getting stuck into things like this is a good idea, because the more experience you get fixing your own boat, the more competent you become. And you know, if one day something goes wrong when you're somewhere where you don't have help at hand, then you'll be in a much better position to resolve things yourself and get yourself out of trouble. Okay, I've started off by closing the seacock round at the back of the engine, which you can't really see, but it's the seacock that draws in the seawater from the sail drive unit. I'm then also going to be closing the engine intake seacock. There's a separate one, so I'll close that. Once I've done that, I'll take off the impeller cover and drain down the cooling seawater from the engine, which will then go in the bilge. And then after that I can start to dismantle the engine. I'll start off by releasing any residual fuel pressure, and then I'll start to take things apart and strip down the engine so that I can get ready to remove the cylinder head. The cylinder head on these engines is cast iron, so there's a sequence tightening to follow, procedure to follow. If you don't follow it, you could potentially crack your cylinder head, which would not be good. That would be an expensive mistake. Just to be on the safe side, I'm using sequence loosening rather than slacken all the bolts on one side and then do the other side. I'm just darting around different areas to help spread the loads across the top of the cylinder head. There we are. Yeah, she's a bit oily. Gotta make sure our oil containment there we are then. I can take this to the diesel specialist after I've collected our spare parts, and then he can change out the injector sleeve. Before we take this to the diesel specialist, I thought I'd go just a little bit further. These injectors can be a real pig to get out. They can be stuck in there with, you know, products of combustion gases mixed with fuel and oil, and it can kind of become a very sticky kind of glue. So to avoid a situation where I take this to him and leave it with him, and then he gets back to me and says, oh, it took me 5 hours to get the injector out, it was seized, so it's going to cost more, I'm going to do that for him. Look at that gunk. Disgusting and very, very sticky. It's kind of, it becomes a kind of mixture of carbon and it's just horrible gunky gluey stuff. So that's why you might struggle at times to get your injector out, because it's glued in by that rubbish there. Anyway, that's out. We can actually see the copper injector sleeve now, and the guy who's going to be doing the job on this should have a nice, quick, easy time with it. Fingers crossed. How ace is Rossella? While I've been doing the engine, she's been doing something in the galley. I didn't really know what she was up to, and then I smelled curry. Look at this! And chapati as well. Yes. Thank you, darling.